Dale's question is something that a lot of Strong Opinion Sports listeners, I think, also share. And so Dale writes in, it's a long one. He says, "Hey, Zach, just want to start off by saying I enjoy the show, and this is my first time submitting a question. That being said, are you going to be using your time focusing on the XFL more than the NFL draft or next season?" So this is obviously a question from last week. He wrote it when the XFL was still going on. But he says, "Over the past 3 or 4 weeks, you've only released 8 or 9 videos pertaining to the NFL, and the majority surrounded 2 topics, Joe Burrow and the Bengals or Tom Brady. This is out of the 80-ish videos you've released in that time span, making about only 10% of your content this past month NFL related, with the majority of your audience tuning in for your insight on the NFL. I was wondering if anything is up. I understand you're covering the XFL because you believe in the product and want to help develop it, but that shouldn't compromise your NFL product, right? At least in my opinion. This can be a rabbit hole, and as you can obviously do what you want with your show, put views aside for doing something you believe in, etc. I'm sure you expected numbers to not do as well, but even I, a regular viewer of the show, have started to tune out. Overall, my question is, why haven't you been covering the NFL as closely in the offseason? There's many contract negotiations, free agent speculation, film analysis, and et cetera that could be discussed." Again, Dale, number one, I really appreciate your question. Dale, I'm grateful for your support on Patreon. This is a really important topic to talk about. And so, and I think that, again, this is something that a lot of Strong Opinion Sports listeners share. They're wondering what was going on in the last, end of January through February. Why were we not talking about the NFL a ton? Why was I not talking about the NFL a bunch? And so I think maybe I have done a poor job setting the expectation for the show and the scheduling and what's going on. Here's how it's going to work next year. I cover the NFL regular season. I love the NFL regular season. It's phenomenal. Of course, I'm obviously going to cover that. We're going to cover the playoffs. I'm going to cover the Super Bowl. And here's how it's going to work out. Next year, the Super Bowl is going to end. And after the Super Bowl in January, I'm going to cover the XFL because I love the XFL. I really am a fan of it. And the NFL slows down a lot. January and February, there's not a lot going on. Well, I guess January, never mind. February, the month of February, the Super Bowl happens, and then there's really not anything going on in the NFL after the Super Bowl for about a month, into mid-March. Mid-March is when free agency happens. So from the Super Bowl until free agency, there's that month, about a month period in February, month and like another week because of March, where there's just not a lot going on in the NFL. And the month of February is all rumors and speculation, and it's just nothing. NFL players are on vacation. NFL teams are doing a lot of scouting stuff for the draft. But the reality is that all the stuff in the media for the NFL at that time period is all rumors and speculation. I literally saw people making content about, you think Tony Romo is going to come out of retirement and come back to play for the Cowboys? Like, they're talking about stuff that isn't worth talking about. They're making crap up literally. I have this crazy idea. Can we spin it into a topic and earn some time on the show? That's literally what people do. And so I don't like doing that. And I'll be quite honest, all that stuff got really boring and exhausting to me. I didn't care. I just was like, I don't care about any of the stuff being talked about right now in the NFL media. People just create silly nonsense that's not worth talking about. I love the XFL. I wanted to cover the XFL. I was very passionate about it. And the thing that the XFL had in February that the NFL simply did not have was substance. I mean, and I will say this, man. A lot of people didn't tune into my XFL content, and that's fine. They didn't want to hear stuff about the XFL. But those people missed out. I'm really proud of the work I did covering the XFL. It's some of the best work I've ever done. Literally, go back and listen to it. I'm really, really proud of the way I covered the XFL. It's really good stuff. And I also knew that, like, in February, there was stuff to talk about. There was an XFL season. There was a little bit of NFL content going on. But summer, once basketball season ends, summer's a pit of despair. There is nothing in July, in June, in a lot of August. There's just not there's a period in the summer where there's literally nothing to talk about related to the NFL. And it's going to be even worse now because of the thing going around and the beer bug that's happening. So my whole thought was, like, I'm not in a hurry to start doing film analysis stuff because there's a time coming on the horizon where there will be nothing to talk about, and I'm going to save it for a rainy day. And so I'll be more clear next year. Next year in February, I'm still going to cover the NFL when there's stuff to talk about. But a lot of the speculation about free agency and this and that proved to be totally nonsense. People were saying, like, is Tom Brady going to go to the 49ers? I'm like, no. And if I'd covered all that stuff, all I would have done repeatedly is been making videos saying, like, there's this crazy nonsense. It's not true. Here's why. I would have made the same video over and over and over and over again, just going like, here's a crazy theory people are talking about. They're saying it because there's nothing to talk about. I don't believe it's true. And it would have just been rinse and repeat. And so what I did, I made a topic basically saying that here's the problem with sports shows on TV, right? And that topic covered all that stuff. All the crazy nonsense going on could be traced back to that video where I just said, here's my blanket statement about all the nonsense happening. Also, I'm going to blow your mind. I plan to cover the Formula One series whenever it comes back. I really am very interested in Formula One. I've gone down a dark rabbit hole as the beer bug, we'll call it. It's been going around messing up with people and getting people sick. I've just dove deep into Formula One. I'm super nerdy about it. The things I'm going to cover in the next year and a half, I'm going to cover Formula One. I'm going to cover football. I love football. Is my favorite sport. I'm going to cover the NFL. I'm going to do a ton of film analysis stuff. But there's a race. If Formula One ever comes back this year, they're going to have a race about every 2-3 weeks if their season ever does restart again. And the Formula One season, there's a race every 2 or 3 weeks, so I can make a video before the race, make a video after the race. It will not infringe on any of the NFL content. But I don't know. It's a weird thing. I love the XFL. I loved covering it. I'm going to cover it next year in February. And the reason why the XFL took over the month of February for me was there just wasn't a lot of substance to talk about in the NFL. The combine's kind of nonsense. The speculation stuff is just not interesting to me. I have a hard time relating to it or caring. People will send me like, Peyton Manning might come out of retirement. They're like, hey, make a video about this. What do you think of this? And I'm like, it's nonsense. It's not worth talking about. So, I don't know. I get, it's weird because if I cover all the nonsense, right? If all the other media outlets have a schedule they have to follow, right? They have a show Monday through Friday, 3 hours a day. They have to make content, whether there is nothing to talk about or if there's something to talk about. So they literally just go down rabbit holes about nothing. I don't have to stoop to that level, and I don't really want to, because it's weird. If I cover nonsense, people then accuse me of saying, oh, you're being like Stephen A. Smith. You're turning into Skip Bayless. So they get mad at me if I cover all the nonsense, say it's ridiculous. But if I don't cover the nonsense, then people get mad at me saying, why aren't you talking about the NFL? And it's like, well, there's not a lot to talk about in the NFL right now. The month of February is going to be always a low month where there's not a lot to talk about in the NFL. I love the XFL. I'm going to talk about that next year. I really, it's fun for me. And I just want to repeat this, man. Most people did not tune into my XFL content. People missed out. I will say this. I'm very proud of what I did. My XFL content is some of the best work I've done in my entire life. And I'm sad people didn't watch it, honestly, because I think they missed out on something pretty good. And so I don't know. I love what I do. I love football. I'm going to cover football forever. It's my favorite thing in the world. Even I would do this job for free. I just love doing strong opinion sports. I started it 2 years ago on top of college. I had college. I had a full-time job when I started the show. It is now my full-time job to do strong opinion sports. That's great. But in the month of February, I don't want to stoop to that level and talk about stuff that isn't worth my time and isn't worth your time. I respect your time. And the XFL dominated because I thought that was the most substantive thing going on at the time. And I don't, like, at the end of the day, I need people to watch my show, number one. I need people to listen to the show, number two. And they're one and two. That no matter how you listen to or view the show, it helps me. But number three, I have to be able to look at myself in the mirror and say, do I like the content I'm making? And if I was making content about, is Tom Brady going to go to the 49ers? Is Tony Romo going to come out of retirement? I don't think I could look myself in the mirror and be like, this is good content. I'm proud of this. And so, and then also, I had a lot of personal turmoil going on in the month of February, stuff I will never talk about. Maybe someday, but stuff that's just private that I can't share. I took a trip to New York. That probably cost me about 4 days worth of content. So, February was really slow. but it's also the slowest time of the year. And if there's ever a time to take a break or to slow down for a little bit, it is a month of February. So I'm sorry, Dale, that when I hear someone say they started to tune out because they weren't getting the content they wanted, that sucks. I don't like that at all. I don't like hearing that. It makes me unhappy. But I also want to make content I'm proud of and that I think is worth listening to. And I repeat, I think the XFL content I made was high quality and worth listening to. And the fact that people didn't want that is sad to me. It is. The show continues. We're back to the NFL now. All we have to talk about right now is NFL stuff. And so I hope people continue to enjoy that. And I know that someday when I cover Formula One, my guess is people like Dale. Dale, love you. Please stay for the NFL stuff. I don't expect Dale to watch my Formula One content. But maybe I'll be carving out a new market of people. But I also want to talk about stuff I'm really passionate and really interested in. And, I was really passionate about the XFL. I was not passionate about is Tony Romo going to the 49ers. And so that's the stuff I chose to cover instead. And that's what's going to happen next year in February. And that's how the show is always going to go. But people are really impatient. When the year ended, I was like, man, I had a lot of film analysis stuff. I made a list of stuff I was excited to cover. But again, I wasn't in a gigantic hurry to get to the film analysis stuff because I know on the horizon, summer's going to be long. It's going to be like nuclear winter in the summer where there's nothing to talk about at all. And I got to save stuff for that time period. So, hey, we're there now. The beer bug's going around, and we got to that content a little quicker than I thought we would, about a month earlier. But that's my plan for the off season and always will be. February is always going to be kind of a slower period where there's just not a lot going on. And when there's not a lot going on, I don't make up random nonsense. I just don't make content as much. So, I'm sorry to the people who felt like they didn't get the content they wanted, but that is how the show works for me. And I just don't want to stoop to the level of talking about things that aren't worth talking about. In case you don't know, Strong Opinion Sports is not just a YouTube channel. It is also a full audio podcast. You can find it on Spotify, on iTunes, on Google Play, pretty much everywhere you find podcasts. And if you like podcasts, please do me a huge favor and give it a listen.